We are still learning about aquatic life zones and freshwater resources. So it's important to talk about the Mississippi River watershed because it's the largest watershed in the United States. You can see here in the bottom of this slide how extensive the watershed is. And all this land area drains into the Gulf of Mexico. The watershed is approximately 1.2 million square miles in size. There are over 166 rivers that empty into the main stem of the Mississippi River that goes into the Gulf of Mexico. The three largest include the Arkansas River, located over here in western United States, the Missouri River, located here in northwestern U.S., you have the main stem of the Mississippi that goes all the way up towards the Great Lakes, and the Ohio River, which comes over here and taps into Pennsylvania. So a portion of Pennsylvania, our western part of Pennsylvania, actually drains through the Ohio River into the Mississippi River and into the Gulf of Mexico. The other portion of Pennsylvania is part of the Susquehanna River watershed, which drains into the Chesapeake Bay. The Mississippi River watershed is the largest in North America, and it's the only 10th order stream in the United States. It's also the fourth largest watershed in the world. As such, it is part of no larger watershed. More than 72 million people live in the Mississippi River watershed, and various land uses are occurring within the watershed, ranging from urbanized land to predominantly agricultural land. Woodland is dark green, predominantly range or barren land. The light blue is wetlands, located down here in this area. And then obviously the dark blue depicts where the streams and rivers are. So the dark green is the forested region. The light green is predominantly agriculture. The yellow is predominantly rangeland for livestock or barren land. And in looking at this diagram, it's very easy to conclude that more than 50% of the Mississippi River watershed is agricultural land. The Mississippi River is one of the world's major river systems in size, habitat diversity, and biological productivity. It flows about 2,350 miles from its source at Lake Itasca through the center of the United States to the Gulf of Mexico. When compared to other world rivers, the Mississippi-Missouri River combination ranks fourth in length, and it follows the Nile, the Amazon, and the Yangtze River. So the three rivers that are longer than the Mississippi River include the Nile, the Amazon River, and the Yangtze River. Communities up and down the river use the river to obtain fresh water and to discharge their industrial and municipal waste. We don't have good figures on water use for the whole Mississippi River basin, but we have some idea. A frequently cited figure of 18 million people using the Mississippi River watershed for water supply comes from a study that was conducted on the Upper Mississippi River Basin Committee. The EPA also refers to 50 cities that rely on the Mississippi River for daily water supply. As indicated earlier, agriculture is the dominant land use for the Mississippi River Basin and has been so for over the past 200 years. The agricultural products and the huge agribusiness industry that has developed in the basin produces 92% of our nation's agricultural exports. 78% of the world's exports in feed grains and soybeans, and most of the livestock and hogs produced nationally. 60% of all grain exported from the U.S. is shipped on the Mississippi River through the Port of New Orleans and the Port of South Louisiana. Shipping at the lower end of the Mississippi River is focused on petroleum and petroleum products, iron and steel, grain, rubber, paper, wood, coffee, coal, chemicals, and oils. Some unique features about the Mississippi River. include that if you were to measure the tonnage, the largest port district in the world is located along the Mississippi River Delta in Louisiana. It's called the Port of Louisiana. It represents 500 million tons of shipped goods per year along the Mississippi River barge port system and is significant to national trade. 60% of all grain exported from the U.S. is transported and shipped on the Mississippi River. Also, about 260 species of fish, 25% of all fish species in North America, live in the Mississippi River watershed. About 326 species of North American birds, or 60% of these birds, basically, use the Mississippi River basin as their migratory flyway to navigate on their migration path. Also, there are 286 candidate threatened and endangered species at a state level and 36 federal listed candidate threatened and endangered species at a federal level that are endemic to the Mississippi River watershed. It's important to talk about watershed organizations when we look at aquatic life zones and freshwater resources. Watershed organizations are citizen volunteer groups that come together and organize for a particular watershed within their community or neighborhood. They volunteer and collect physical, biological, and water quality samples from streams and rivers within the watershed that is near them. Thousands of stream miles have never been sampled by water quality agencies due to the lack of resources. Hence, having this volunteer group available and trained by scientists allows a small watershed army to go out and monitor streams. Typically, people live near the stream or feel closely affected by it, and it's a vital practical education experience for the volunteers. These volunteers are also watchdogs for permit violations or illegal discharges into the streams and rivers, and they can help document the success of different stream restoration or rehabilitation projects. Actually, they can be the hands and feet that do the stream restoration and rehabilitation projects. These watershed organization groups also help raise awareness in the community about water quality problems, water quality improvements, and how water quality is influenced by the activities of the people that live right there next to the stream. So it's a great opportunity to volunteer and help out to protect the water quality in your nearby stream. So I definitely challenge you to find out what your local stream is, and if there is a watershed organization that you can volunteer for to help out in order to protect the water quality of the stream. These watershed groups monitor, as mentioned earlier, physical characteristics of the stream, chemical characteristics of the stream, as well as doing biological monitoring. So when they go out to a stream sampling location, they'll look at the physical characteristics of the width of the stream, the depth of the stream. They'll actually measure the volume of the stream, the clarity of the stream, what the habitat looks like, and so on. This is one of the easiest activities for citizen volunteer members to undertake. And it's valuable information that is used by the state agencies and the United States Geological Survey to understand how healthy the stream corridor is and the habitat is, as well as if there's any issues with stream bank erosion. The other thing that they can do is collect water samples to allow a chemical snapshot of water quality at a specific time and location on the stream. They go out and collect these samples and then submit them to the lab for further analysis. And oftentimes these groups operate under a federal grant or a state grant that provides funds to help pay for the equipment as well as the laboratory analysis. So really it's their labor that's volunteered. The biological monitoring is probably the most fun aspect of being involved with a volunteer watershed organization. You get to go out and collect the little critters that live in the base of the stream bed and identify these little critters and calculate their population density, and this helps determine whether or not the stream is healthy or not. Basically, the relative stability of the aquatic critters can indicate short or long-term pollution events that may not be observed by just collecting a dip sample of water and sending it off to the lab. So aquatic species are really good water quality indicators based on their relative tolerance to water pollution. So the ecosystem services and economic services offered by our freshwater streams and lakes and ponds and rivers are listed on the screen in front of you. From an ecosystem standpoint, they provide habitat for species, genetic resources for biodiversity, nutrient cycling, and flood control. Economic services are listed there as well. They can provide food resources such as fish, drinking water supply, irrigation water for farms and agriculture, and hydroelectricity if there are dams placed on the stream or the river for, with flowing water, transportation corridors with shipping, recreation, and of course employment. So let's talk quickly about lakes. Lakes are classified based on their nutrient content and their primary productivity. And we typically say a lake is either going to be oligotrophic, eutrophic, or mesotrophic. Oligotrophic refers to a lake being nutrient poor. Eutrophic refers to a lake being nutrient rich. And mesotrophic falls between these two extremes of nutrient content. When a lake is impacted by excessive nutrients from human activity such as agricultural farming or discharge of wastewater into the streams that feed into that lake, we can have what is called cultural eutrophication occur. This is a process that adds human-generated pollution and agricultural runoff with excess nutrients and sediments to these water systems, and basically the lake becomes unhealthy. This is a diagram of an oligotrophic lake. Oligotrophic lakes typically have deep, steep banks and are typically a newly formed lake with low nutrients. Because of its low nutrients, the lake usually has crystal clear blue or green water with small population of fish. Notice that there's a habitat zone adjacent to the shoreline as the littoral zone. This is a narrow zone on an oligotrophic lake, and on a eutrophic lake this zone is much wider, as you'll see in the next picture. Then we have what's known as the limnetic zone, and this is a zone in which sunlight penetrates to, and you have a good bit of photosynthesis going on in this region, and most of the fish are going to thrive up in this area. And then the profundal zone is the deeper part of the lake. This picture provides a depiction of a eutrophic lake. Notice the wider littoral zone with the vegetation along the shoreline. You have a high concentration of nutrients in this lake, and as a result you have a lot of plankton that are doing photosynthesis, and you have a good foundation for the food web. As a result, you have dense fish population in the limnetic zone. Now, one of the other things with eutrophic lakes is that when you get too much nutrients and have algae blooms occur, the algae will die and fall through the water column to the bottom, and it will decay down here, and during the decay process it sucks the oxygen out of the water and therefore depletes the dissolved oxygen, and you won't have much fish in the deeper portion of a eutrophic lake. This is a picture of an oligotrophic lake. Notice the steep banks surrounding the lake itself, the really crystal blue, pristine watercolor, and this huge watershed surrounding this lake is fairly undeveloped. This is an example of a eutrophic lake, and notice all the green algae and duckweed floating on the surface, and the very wide littoral zone with the cattails and vegetation.